Hello everyone! Easter weekend, so no live streams this weekend, but I wanted to make sure we still had our story time on a Sunday, so I pre-recorded it for you all. So we're going to start reading The Boy in the Dress by David Walliams. I've never read this before, so when I've done Fantastic Mr. Fox, I'd read it before, so I knew what was happening, what the characters were like. So it made me doing the voices a little bit easier, whereas this one, I have no idea. So it could be wild. So rules of story time are, you get yourself nice and cozy. Maybe get yourself a nice warm drink, a hot chocolate. If you've got a soft toy, get him nearby. You can put your pyjamas on, like I got my pyjamas. Just so you all know, the sneaky surprise Instagram live feed is happening whilst I record this. So if I keep looking up here, it's because Instagram are watching me read this live. The Insta fam. But unfortunately, Instagram family, I'm not going to be able to talk to you all whilst I am reading this. So, just sit and chat amongst yourselves. And I shall begin The Boy in the Dress by David Walliams. Chapter 1. No hugging. Dennis was different. When he looked in the mirror, he saw an ordinary 12-year-old boy. But he felt difference. His thoughts were full of colour and poetry, though his life could be very boring. The story I'm going to tell you begins here, in Dennis's ordinary house, on an ordinary street in an ordinary town. His house was nearly exactly the same as all the others in the street. One house had double glazing, another did not. One had a gravel drive, another had crazy paving. One had a Vauxhall Cavalier in the drive, another a Vauxhall Astra. Tiny differences that only really pointed out the sameness of everything. It was all so ordinary. Something extraordinary just had to happen. Dennis lived with his dad, who did have a name, but Dennis just called him Dad. So I will too. And his older brother John, who was 14. Dennis found it frustrating that his brother would always be 2 years older than him, and bigger, and stronger. Dennis's mum had left him a couple of years ago. Before that, Dennis used to creep out of his room and sit at the top of the stairs and listen to his mum and dad shout at each other until one day the shouting stopped. She was gone. Dad banned John and Dennis from ever mentioning mum again, and soon after she left, he went around the house and took down all the photographs of her and burnt them in a big bonfire. Dennis managed to save one. One solitary photograph escaped the flames, dancing up into the air from the heat of the fire before floating through the smoke and onto the hedge. As dusk fell, Dennis snuck out and retrieved the photo. It was charred and blackened around the edges, and at first his heart sank. But when he turned it to the light, he saw that the image was as bright and clear as ever. It showed a joyful scene. A younger John and Dennis with Mum at the beach, Mum wearing a lovely yellow dress with flowers on it. Dennis loved that dress. It was full of colour and life, and soft to the touch. When Mum put it on, it meant that summer had arrived. It had been warm outside after she had left, but hadn't really been summer in their house again. In the pictures, Dennis and his brother were in swimming trunks holding ice cream cones, vanilla ice cream smeared around their smiling mouths. Dennis kept the photo in his pocket and looked at it secretly every day. His mum looked so achingly beautiful in it, even though her smile was uncertain. Dennis stared at it for hours on end, trying to imagine what she had been thinking when it was taken. After Mum left, Dad didn't say much. But when he did, he would often shout. So Dennis ended up watching a lot of television, and especially his favourite show, Trisha. Dennis had seen a Trisha episode about people with depression and thought maybe his dad had that. Dennis loved Trisha. It was a daytime talk show where ordinary people were given the opportunity to talk about their problems, or yell abuse at their relatives, and it was all presided over by a kindly-looking but judgmental woman conveniently called Tricia. For a while, Dennis thought life without his mum would be some kind of adventure. He'd stay up late, eat takeaways, and watch rude comedy shows. However, as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, and the months turned into years, he realised that it wasn't an adventure at all. It was just sad. Dennis and John sort of loved each other in that way that they had to because they were brothers. But John tested this love quite often by doing things he thought was funny, like sitting on Dennis's face and farting. Oh, Dennis! Oh, no, oh, John. If farting had been an Olympic sport, at the time of writing, I am told it isn't, which I feel is a shame. He would have won a number of gold medals, and probably received a knighthood from the Queen. Now, reader, you might be thinking that as their mum had left, the two brothers would be brought closer together. Sadly, it only drove them apart. Unlike Dennis, John was full of silent rage with his mum for leaving, and agreed with Dad that it was better never to mention her ever again. It was one of the rules of the house. No talking about Mum, no crying, and worst of all, no hugging. Dennis, on the other hand, was just full of sadness. Sometimes he missed his mum so much that he cried in bed at night. He tried to cry as quietly as possible because he and his brother shared a room and he didn't want John to hear. But one night, Dennis's sobs woke John up. Dennis? Dennis! What are you crying for now? Demanded John from his bed. I don't know. It's just, well, I just wish that Mum was here and everything, came the reply from Dennis. Well, don't cry. She's gone and she's not coming back. You don't know that. She's never coming back, Dennis. Now stop crying. Only girls cry. But Dennis couldn't stop crying. The pain ebbed and flowed inside him like the sea, crashing down on him, almost drowning him in tears. He didn't want to upset his brother, though, so he cried as quietly as he possibly could. So why was Dennis so different, I hear you ask? After all, this boy lived in an ordinary house, in an ordinary street, in an ordinary town. Well, I'm not going to tell you why yet, but the clue might be in the title of this book. I was about to make that joke myself, but David Walliams beat me to it. Chapter 2. Fat Dad. Dennis's dad jumped up and down and shouted with joy. Then he pulled Dennis into a tight hug. 2-0, he said. We showed him, eh, son? Yes, I know I said there was no hugging in Dennis's house, but this was different. It was football. In Dennis's house, talking about football was easier than talking about feelings. He, John and Dad all loved football and together shared their highs and more often lows of supporting their local 3rd Division team. But as soon as the match finished and the referee blew his whistle, it was as if that sound also signalled a return to their strict no-hugging policy. Dennis did miss being hugged. His mum had hugged him all the time. She was so warm and soft. He loved being held by her. Most children can't wait to grow up and get bigger, but Dennis missed being small and being picked up by his mother. It was in her arms that he had felt most safe. It was a shame Dennis's dad hardly ever hugged him. Fat people are good at hugs. They're nice and soft like our big comfy sofa. Oh yes, I didn't mention, Dad was fat. Really fat. Nothing wrong with that. No need to fat shame. Dad worked as a long-distance lorry driver, and all that sitting down and driving had taken its toll, only stretching his legs to go to the service station cafe and eat various combinations of eggs, sausage, bacon, beans, and chips. Sometimes after breakfast, Dad would eat 2 packets of crisps. He just got fatter and fatter after Mum left. Dennis had seen a Trisha episode about a man called Barry who was so fat he couldn't wipe his bum. The studio audience were told about his daily food intake and oohed and ahed with a strange mixture of delight and horror. Then Trisha asked him, Barry, does the fact that you have to get your mum or dad to wipe your underneath not make you want to lose weight? Well, Trisha, I just love me food, was Barry's smirking reply. Trisha put it to Barry that he was comfort eating. Trisha was good at phrases like that. She had, after all, been through a lot of difficult times herself. Barry cried a bit at the end, and as the credits rolled, Trisha smiled sadly and gave him a hug, though it was hard for her to really get her arms round Barry, as he was the size of a small bungalow. Dennis wondered whether his dad was comfort eating too, having one more sausage or slice of fried bread at breakfast to, in Trisha's words, fill the emptiness inside. But he didn't dare share that thought with his dad. Dad wasn't keen on Dennis watching the show anyway. He said, "It's just for girls, that." Dennis dreamed of one day having his own Trisha episode with the title, My Brother's Farts Smell Well Bad, or My Dad Has a Chocolate Hobnob Problem. Dad ate a whole packet of the admittedly Moorish biscuits every day when he got home from work. I've eaten a whole pack of chocolate hobnobs in my lifetime. So, when Dennis, his dad and John played football, Dad would always go in goal because he was so fat. He liked it because it meant he didn't have to run around that much. The goal was an upturned bucket and an empty beer keg, a remnant from a long-forgotten barbecue they'd once had when Mum was still around. They didn't have barbecues anymore. These days they just had battered sausages from the local chippy or bowls of cereal, even when it wasn't breakfast. What Dennis loved most about playing football with his family was that he was the best. Even though his brother was 2 years older, Dennis could ring rings around him in the garden, tackling, dribbling and scoring with great skill. And it wasn't like it was easy to get page won't turn. The ball past his dad. Not because his dad was good in goal, it was just that he was so big. On Sunday mornings, Dennis used to play football for his local club. He dreamed of being a professional footballer, but after his mum and dad split up, he stopped going. He'd always relied on his mum to give him a lift. Dad couldn't take him as he was forever driving up and down the country in his lorry, trying to make ends meet. So Dennis's dream floated quietly away. Dennis did play football for his school, though, and he was the team's number one shooter? Sorry, reader, I must look this up. Striker. Yes, Dennis was his team's number one striker, scoring over 1 million goals in a year. Excuse me again, reader, I don't know much about football. Maybe 1 million is too much. 1,000? 100? 2? Whatever. He scored the most goals. As a result, Dennis was incredibly popular with his teammates, except the captain, Gareth, who picked Dennis up on every little mistake on the pitch. Dennis suspected that Gareth was jealous of him because he was a better footballer. Gareth was one of those boys who are unusually large for their age. In fact, you wouldn't be surprised to find him he was really 5 years older than everyone else in his year, but he had just been held back on account of being a bit thick. Once, Dennis was off school with a really bad cold on match day. He had just finished watching that day's Trisha, a gripping episode about a woman who discovered she was having an affair with her own husband. Then he was looking forward to some Heinz tomato soup and his second favourite show, Loose Women, where a panel of angry-looking ladies debated important issues of the day, like diets and leggings. But just as the signature tune was starting, there was a knock at the door. Dennis got up grumpily. It was Darvish, Dennis's best friend at school. "Dennis, we desperately need you to pay today." "I'm sorry, Darvish. I'm just not feeling well. I can't stop sneezing. Cough. Achoo!" "See?" replied Dennis. "But it's the quarterfinals today. We've always got knocked out of the quarterfinals before. Please." Dennis sneezed again. Achoo! It was such a strong sneeze, you thought he was going to turn inside out. "Please," said Darvesh hopefully as he discreetly wiped off some of Dennis's stray snot off his tie. "Okay, I'll try," coughed Dennis. "Yes!" exclaimed Darvesh, as if victory was already theirs. Dennis gulped down a couple of mouthfuls of soup, grabbed his kit, and ran out of the house. Darvesh's mum was sitting in her little red Ford Fiesta outside, with the engine running. She worked on the till at Sainsbury's, but lived to see her son play football. She was the proudest mum in the world, which always made her son squirm a little. "Oh, thank goodness you've come, Dennis," she said as Dennis clambered into the back seat. "The team needs you today. It's a very important match. Without doubt the most important match of the season." "Just drive, please, Mum," said Darvesh. All right, we're going. Don't talk to your mother like that, Darvesh," she said, pretending to be angrier than she really was. She put her foot on the accelerator, and the car lurched uncertainly off towards the school playing fields. You've decided to come, have you?" growled Gareth as they pulled up. Not only was he bigger than everyone else, he had a deeper voice and was disturbingly hairy for a boy his age. Know that feeling. When he showered, he looked like a big monkey. "Sorry, Gareth, I just wasn't feeling well. I've got a pretty bad..." But before he could say cold, he sneezed again, even more violently. Before. "Oh, sorry, Gareth," said Dennis, wiping a small gloop of snot from Gareth's ear with a tissue. "Let's just do this," said Gareth. Feeling weak with illness, Dennis ran onto the school pitch with his team, coughing and spluttering all the way. "Good luck, boys, especially my son Darvesh, and of course his friend Dennis. Let's win this for the school!" shouted Darvesh's mum from the side of the pitch. "My mum is so embarrassing," rumbled Darvesh. "I think it's cool she comes," said Dennis. "My dad's never seen me playing in a match." "Let's see a nice goal from you today, please, Darvesh, my son." Maybe she is a bit embarrassing, agreed Dennis. That afternoon they were playing St. Kenneth's School for Boys, one of those schools where the pupils felt a little bit superior just because their parents had to pay for them to go there. They were a very good team, though, and within the first 10 minutes had scored. The pressure was immediately on, and Darvesh stole the ball off a boy who looked twice his size and passed it to death. "Lovely tackle, Darvesh, my son!" shouted Darvesh's mum. The thrill of possessing the ball made Dennis forget his cold for a moment, and he weaved his way through the defence, approached the goalkeeper, a luxuriantly haired boy sporting a brand new kit. He was probably called Oscar or Tobias or something. All of a sudden, they were face to face, and Dennis sneezed again, uncontrollably. The snot exploded onto the goalie's face, blinding him for a moment, and all Dennis needed to do was tap the ball past the line. Can't whistle. "Foul!" shouted the goalkeeper, but the referee allowed it. It was foul, but not technically a foul. "Sorry about that," said Dennis. He really hadn't meant to do it. "Don't worry, I have a tissue!" exclaimed Darvesh's mum. "I always carry a packet of tissue with me." She hurtled onto the pitch, hitching up her sari to avoid the mud, and ran up to the goalie. "There you go, posh boy," she said, handing him the tissue. Darvesh rolled his eyes at his mother's one-woman pitch invasion. The goalie tearfully wiped Dennis's mucus from his floppy hair. "Personally, I think St. Kenneth's don't stand a chance," she added. Mom! Shouted Darvish. Sorry, play on! 4 goals later, one from Dennis, one from Garish, one from Darvish, and one accidental deflection from Darvish's mum, and the game was won. You are through to the semi-final, boys! I can't wait! Exclaimed Darvish's mum as she drove the boys home, beeping out tunes on the Ford Fiesta's horn in celebration. It was Hey Baby on the Ford Fiesta horn. I've lost where I was now. I got so into that. There we go. For her, it was as if England had won the World Cup. Oh, please don't come, Mum, I beg you. Not if you're going to do that again. How dare you, Darvish? You know I wouldn't miss the next game for the world. Oh, you make me so proud. Darvish and Dennis looked at each other and smiled. For a moment, their victory on the pitch made them feel like they owned the universe. Even Dad raised a smile when Dennis told him that his team were through to the semi-final. But Dad wasn't going to stay happy for long. Chapter 3. Under the mattress. What the hell is this? Said Dad. His eyes were popping out. He was so angry. It's a magazine, replied Dennis. I can see it's a magazine. Dennis wondered why his dad was asking if he already knew what it was. But he had kept that thought to himself. It's Vogue magazine, Dad. I can see it's Vogue magazine. Dennis fell silent. He had brought the magazine from the newsagents a few days before. Dennis liked the picture on the cover. It was of a very pretty girl in an even prettier yellow dress with what looked like roses sewn in on the front, and it really reminded him of the dress his mum was wearing in the photograph he'd kept. He just had to buy it, even though the magazine was £3.80 and he only got £5 a week in pocket money. Only 17 schoolchildren allowed in at one time, read the sign in the newsagent's shop window. The shop was run by a very jolly man called Raj, who laughed even when nothing funny was happening. He laughed when he said your name as you walked through the door. And that was just what he did when Dennis went into the shop. Dennis! Ha ha! Seeing Raj laugh, it was impossible not to laugh too. Dennis visited Raj's shop most days on his way to or from school, sometimes just to chat to Raj. And after he picked up this copy of Vogue, he felt a twinge of embarrassment. He knew it was usually women who bought it, so he also picked a copy of Shoot on the way to the counter, hoping to hide the Vogue underneath it. But after ringing up the Shoot magazine on the till, Raj paused. He looked at the Vogue magazine, then looked at Dennis. Dennis gulped. Are you sure you want this, Dennis? Asked Raj. Vogue is mainly read by ladies and your drama teacher, Mr. Howard. Dennis hesitated. It's a present for a friend, Raj. It's her birthday. Oh, I see. Maybe you'd like some wrapping paper to go with it. Okay. Dennis smiled. Raj was a rather wonderful businessman and very skilled at getting you to buy things you didn't really want. All the wrapping paper is over there by the greeting cards. Dennis reluctantly wandered over. Oh, said Raj, excited. Maybe you need a card to go with it. Let me help. Raj bounded out from behind the counter and began to proudly show Dennis his range of cards. These are very popular with the ladies. Flowers. Ladies love flowers. He pointed out another. Kittens! Look at these lovely kittens. And puppies! Raj was really excited now. Look at those lovely puppies. They're so beautiful, Dennis. They want to cry. Said Dennis, looking at the card with puppies on it, trying to understand why it might make someone shed actual tears. Does this lady friend of yours prefer kittens or puppies? Raj asked. I'm not sure, said Dennis, unable to think what this lady friend of his might like, if she existed. Puppies, I think, Raj? Puppies it is! These puppies are so beautiful, I want to kiss them all over. Dennis tried to nod his head in agreement, but his head wouldn't move. Is this wrapping paper okay? Asked Raj as he pulled out a roll of what looked suspiciously like unsold Christmas wrapper. It's got Father Christmas on it, Raj. Yes, Dennis, and he's wishing you a very happy birthday, said Raj confidently. I think I'll just leave it, thanks. Buy one extra roll. I'll give you a third 3, said Raj. No, thank you. 3 rolls for the price of 2. That's a very good offer. No, thanks, said Dennis again. 7 rolls for the price of 5? Dennis only got D's in maths, so wasn't sure if this was a better offer or not. But he didn't want 7 rolls of Father Christmas wrapping paper, especially in March. So he said again, no thanks. 11 rolls for the price of 8? No thanks. You're a madman, Dennis! That's 3 rolls for free! But I really don't need 11 rolls of wrapping paper, said Dennis. Okay, said Raj. Let me put these through the till for you. Dennis followed Raj to the till. He glanced briefly at the sweets on the counter. Vogue magazine, Shoot magazine, card, and now you're eyeing up my Yorkie bars, aren't you, Dennis? Said Raj, laughing. Well, I was just... Take one. No thanks. Take one, insisted Raj. It's okay. Please, Dennis, I want you to have a Yorkie bar. I don't really like Yorkie bars. Everyone likes Yorkie bars. Please take one. Dennis smiled and picked up a Yorkie. One Yorkie bar, 60p, said Raj. Dennis's face dropped. So that's £5 in total, please, continued the shopkeeper. Dennis rummaged in his pocket and pulled out some coins. As my favourite customer, said Raj, I give you a discount. Oh, thank you, said Dennis. £4.99, please. Dennis had walked halfway up the street before he heard a voice shout, Sellotape! He looked around. Raj was holding a large box of sellotape. You need sellotape to wrap the present. No thanks, said Dennis politely. We've got some at home. 15 rolls for the price of 13, Raj shouted. Dennis smiled and carried on walking. He felt a sudden surge of excitement. He couldn't wait to get home and open the magazine and gaze at its hundreds of glossy, colourful pages. He walked faster, then started jogging when he really couldn't contain his excitement any more, he started running. When he got home, Dennis bounded upstairs. He closed the bedroom door, lay down on his bed, and turned to the first page. Like a treasure box from an old film, the magazine seemed to shine a golden light on his face. The first 100 pages were all adverts, but in a way that they were the best bit. Pages and pages of glorious photographs of beautiful women in beautiful clothes and makeup and jewellery and shoes and bags and sunglasses. Names like Yves Saint Laurent, Christian Dior, Tom Ford, Alexander McQueen, Louis Vuitton, Marc Jacobs and Stella McCartney ran underneath the images. Dennis didn't know who any of them were, but he loved the way their names looked on the page. The adverts were followed by a few pages of writing. They looked boring, so he didn't read them. Then pages and pages of fashion shoots. They were not very different from the adverts, featuring more beautiful women in photographs that were moody and fabulous. The magazine even smelled exotic. It had special pages where you pulled open a flap to have a sniff of the newest perfume. Smells of library. Dennis pored over every page, mesmerised by the dresses, their colour, their length, their cut. He could lose himself in the pages forever. The glamour, the beauty, the perfection. Suddenly, he heard a key in the door. "Dennis! Oi, bro! Where are you?" It was John. Dennis quickly hid the magazine under his mattress. He knew somehow that he didn't want his brother to see it. He opened the bedroom door and called down as innocently as he could from the top of the stairs. I'm just up here." "What are you doing?" asked John as he leaped up the stairs, a Jaffa cake in his mouth. "Nothing. Just got home." "Do you want to have a kickabout in the garden?" "Yeah, okay." But all the time they played, Dennis couldn't help thinking about the magazine, as if it was glowing like gold from under the mattress. That night, when his brother was in the bath, he quietly lifted the copy of Vogue from under the mattress and silently turned the pages, studying every hem, every stitch, every fabric. Every moment he could, Dennis returned to this glorious world. It was his Narnia, only without the talking liar that's supposed to be Jesus. But Dennis's escape to that magical world of glamour ended the day his dad discovered the magazine. "I can see it's Vogue. What I want to know is why a son of mine wants to look at a fashion magazine." It sounded like a question. There was such anger and force in Dad's voice, Dennis wasn't sure if he really wanted an answer. Not that Dennis could think of one anyway. I just like it. It's only pictures and things about dresses and that." "I can see that," said Dad, looking at the magazine. And that was when he paused, and a funny look crossed his face. He studied the cover for a moment. The girl in the flowery frock. "That dress. It's like the one you're..." "Yes, Dad?" "Nothing, Dennis, nothing." Dad looked for a moment like he was going to cry. "It's okay, Dad," said Dennis softly, and he slowly moved his hand and placed it over his dad's. He remembered doing the same with his mum once when Dad made her cry. He remembered how strange it felt too, a little boy comforting a grown-up. Dad let Dennis hold his hand for a moment before moving it away, embarrassed. He raised his voice again. "No, son of mine. No, son. It's just not right. Dresses. It's weird." "Well, Dad, what are you doing looking under my mattress in the first place?" In truth, Dennis knew exactly why his dad was looking under his mattress. Dad owned a copy of a rude magazine like the ones on the top shelf at Raj's shop. Sometimes John would sneak into their dad's room and smuggle it out and look at it. Dennis looked at it too, sometimes, but didn't find it all that exciting. He was disappointed when the ladies took their clothes off. He preferred looking at what they were wearing. Anyway, when John borrowed his father's magazine, it wasn't really like when you borrow a book from the library. There wasn't an inlay card that would have to be stamped by a bespectacled librarian, and you didn't incur fines if you'd returned it late, so John just usually kept it. Dennis guessed that his dad's magazine had gone missing again, and he had been looking for it when he found the copy of Vogue. "Well, I was just looking under your mattress because..." Dad looked uncomfortable and then angry. "It doesn't matter why I was looking under your mattress. I'm your dad. I could look under your mattress any time I like." He finished his speech with a tone of triumph grown-ups sometimes use when they are talking nonsense and they know it. I never do that. Members who come to my youth club, never do that. Dennis's dad brandished the magazine. "This is going in the dustbin, son." "But, Dad," Dennis protested. "I'm sorry, it's just not right. A boy your age reading Vogue magazine." He said Vogue magazine as if he was talking a foreign language he didn't understand. "It's just not right," he muttered over and over as he left the room. "It's just not right." Dennis sat on the edge of his bed. He listened to his dad clumped his way down the stairs and then lifted the dustbin lid. Finally, he heard a clanging thud as the magazine hit the bottom of the bin. Didn't expect there to be rude magazines in this book. Oh, it takes a... Reading aloud for this long makes your mouth go quite dry. Chapter 4. Wanting to Disappear. Morning, Dennis. Or should I say, Denise? Said John, laughing cruelly. I told you not to mention it, said Dad sternly, as he coated his white toast with an inch of thick layer of butter. When Mum was around, she'd have made him have margarine and brown bread. Dennis slumped down at the kitchen table in silence, not even looking at his brother. He poured himself some Rice Krispies. Seen any nice dresses recently? Taunted John. He laughed again. I told you to leave it alone, said Dad, even louder than before. Magazines like that are for girls and woofters. Shut up, said Dad. Dennis suddenly didn't feel hungry anymore and picked up his bag and walked out of the door. He slammed it behind him. He could still hear Dad saying, What did I say, John? It's over, okay? It's in the bin. Dennis walked unwillingly to school. He didn't want to be at home or at school. He was afraid his brother would tell somebody and he'd be laughed at. He just wanted to disappear. When he was much younger, he used to believe that if he closed his eyes, no one else could see him. Right now, he wished this was true. The first lesson of the day was history. Dennis liked history. They were studying the Tudor dynasty, and he loved looking at the pictures of the kings and queens in all their finery, especially Elizabeth I, who really knew how to power dress, an expression he had read in Vogue next to a shoot of a model in a beautifully cut business suit. But Dennis always found chemistry, the next lesson, mind-numbingly boring. He spent most of the lesson staring at the periodic table, trying to fathom what it was. When break time came, Dennis played football, as usual, in the playground with his friends. He was having fun until he saw John with a group of his mates, the bad boys with short hair whose career advisors would probably advise them to become nightclub bouncers or criminals. They ambled through the middle of the makeshift pitch. Dennis held his breath. John nodded at his brother, but said nothing. Dennis let out a sigh of relief. He was pretty sure his brother couldn't have told anyone that he'd bought a woman's fashion magazine. After all, Darvesh was playing football with him, as he always did. They played with an old tennis ball that Darvesh's dog, Oddbod, had chewed. It was a school rule that footballs weren't allowed in the playground in case a window got broken. Darvesh set Dennis up to score with a daring cross. Then Dennis headed the ball and it flew too high up past what was meant to be the goal and through the window of the headmaster's office. John and his friends stared, mouths open. The playground fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. In the unlikely event that someone had dropped a pin at that exact moment. Oops, said Darvish. Yes, oops, said Dennis. Oops was really an understatement. The headmaster, Mr. Hawtrey, hated children. Actually, he hated everybody, probably even himself. He wore an immaculate three-piece grey suit with a charcoal-coloured tie and dark framed glasses. His hair was meticulously combed and parted, and he had a thin black moustache. It was as if he actively wanted to look sinister, and he had a face that someone who has spent their whole life grimacing ends up with. A permanently grimacing one. He might not be in his office, ventured Darvesh hopefully. Maybe, said Dennis, gulping. At that moment, the headmaster's face peered out of the window. "School!" he bellowed. The playground fell silent. "Who kicked this ball?" He held the tennis ball between his fingers with the same sense of disgust that dog owners do when they are forced to pick up their dog's doo-doo. Dennis was too scared to say anything. "I asked a question. Who kicked it?" Dennis gulped. "I didn't kick it, sir," he offered tentatively. "But I did header it." "Detention today, boy. 4 o'clock. "Thank you, sir," said Dennis, not sure what else to say. "Because of your behaviour, all ball games in the playground are banned for today," added Mr. Hawtrey before disappearing back into his study. A sigh of angry disappointment echoed around the playground. Dennis hated it when teachers did that, when they made everyone suffer to make you unpopular with your classmates. It was a cheap trick. "Don't worry, Dennis," said Darvish. "Everyone knows Mr. Hartrey's a total—" "Yeah, I know." They sat on their bags by the wall of the science block and opened their lunch boxes, devouring the sandwich that were meant for lunch. Dennis hadn't told Darvish about buying Vogue, but he wanted to find out what his friend thought about it in a roundabout way. Darvish was Sikh. As he was in the same year as Dennis and only 12, he didn't wear a turban yet. He wore a patka, a bobble hat type thing that kept their hair out of their face. That's because Sikh men aren't supposed to cut their hair. There were lots of different types of kids at the school, but Darvish was the only one who wore a patka. "Do you feel different, Darvish?" asked Dennis. "In what way?" "Well, just, you're the only boy in school who has to wear one of those things on your head." "Oh, yeah, that, yeah. Well, with my family, of course, I don't. And when Mum took me to India at Christmas to visit Grandma, I didn't at all. All the Sikh boys were wearing them." "But at school?" "At first I did, yes. I felt a bit embarrassed, because I knew I looked different to everyone." "Yeah. And then I suppose, as people got to know me, they realised I wasn't really that different. I just wear this funny thing on my head." He laughed. Dennis laughed too. "Yeah, you're just my mate, Darvish. I don't really think about that thing on your head at all. In fact, I quite like one." "No, you wouldn't. It itches like hell." "But it would be boring if we were all the same, wouldn't it?" "It certainly would." Dennis smiled. Chapter 5. Just doodling. Dennis had never had a detention before, so in a way he was quite looking forward to it. When he turned up at classroom 4C to report to the French teacher, Miss Windsor, he noticed there was only one other person who had been sentenced to an hour's incarceration. It was Lisa James. Only the most beautiful girl in the school. She was super cool too, and somehow she always made her school uniform look like it was a costume in a pop video. Even though they had never spoken, Dennis had a really big crush on Lisa. Not that anything would ever happen, though. Her being 2 years older and 6 inches taller made her literally out of reach. "Hi," said Lisa. She had a gorgeous voice, rough around the edges, but soft inside. Just like my regular voice, I guess. "Oh, hi. Dennis pretended not to remember her name. "Lisa, what's your name?" Dennis thought for a moment about changing his name to something cooler like Brad or Dirk to try and impress her, but realised that would be insane. "Dennis!" "Hi, Dennis," said Lisa. "What are you in for?" "I headed a ball into Hawtrey's office." "Cool!" said Lisa. Dennis laughed a little. She obviously assumed that he had headed the ball into the headmaster's office on purpose, and he wasn't about to correct her. "What about you?" "I wasn't wearing the correct school uniform." This time Hawtrey said my skirt was too short. Dennis looked down at Lisa's skirt. It was quite short. I really don't care, she continued. I'd rather wear what I want than get the odd detention now and then. Sorry, interrupted Miss Windsor. There's not really meant to be any talking in detention. Miss Windsor was one of those nights teachers who didn't really enjoy telling people off. She would usually say, excuse me, or sorry, before she did. She was probably in her late 40s. Miss Windsor didn't wear a wedding ring or seem to have any kids. She liked to exude a little French sophistication, throwing colourful silk scarves over her shoulder with mock nonchalance, and devouring 4 packs of croissants from the Tesco Metro at break time. Sorry, Miss Windsor, said Lisa. Dennis and Lisa smiled at each other. Dennis got back to his lines. I must not head a balls into the headmaster's window. I must not head a balls into the headmaster's window. I must not head a balls into the headmaster's window. He looked over at what Lisa was doing. Instead of her lines, she was idly sketching some dress designs. A ball gown with a plunging back looked like it wouldn't be out of place in vogue. She turned over the page and started sketching a strapless top and pencil skirt. Next to that, she drew a long, flowing white suit that went in and out in all the right places. Lisa clearly had a real flair for fashion. Excuse me, said Miss Windsor, but you should really concentrate on your own work, Dennis. Sorry, miss, said Dennis. He started his lines again. I must not head a balls into the headmaster's window. I must not head a Vogue into the headmaster's window. I must not read Vogue into the headmaster's. Dennis sighed and rubbed out his last few lines. He was getting distracted. After 45 minutes, Miss Windsor looked at looked at her watch anxiously and addressed the class of 2. I'm sorry, she said, but either of you mind if we finish this detention 15 minutes early? Only I would quite like to get home in time for neighbours. Lassiter's coffee shop is reopening today after the dramatic fire. No problem, miss, said Lisa, smiling. Don't worry, we won't tell anyone. Thank you, said Miss Windsor, confused for a moment that somehow the roles had been reversed, and it was Dennis and Lisa who were letting her off. Do you want to walk me home, Dennis? Asked Lisa. What? Said Dennis in a panic. I said, do you want to walk me home? Yeah, okay, said Dennis, trying to sound cool. Dennis felt like a celebrity as he walked down the road with Lisa. He walked slowly so he could be with her for as long as possible. I couldn't help but notice your drawings, those dress designs. They're brilliant, said Dennis. Oh, thanks. They were really nothing. I was just doodling. And I love the way you look. Thank you, replied Lisa, trying not to laugh. I mean dress. Dennis corrected himself. Dress. I love the way you dress. Thanks, said Lisa, smiling again. She looked so unutterably gorgeous when she smiled that Dennis could barely look at her. Instead, he looked down at her shoes, noticing they were round-toed. Beautiful shoes, he offered. Well, thank you for noticing. Apparently, round-toed shoes are in this year. Pointy-toed are out. Where did you read that? Vogue. I mean, you read Vogue? Dennis caught his breath. What had he said? In all the excitement of being with Lisa, his tongue was running away with itself. No. Well, yeah, once. I think that's cool. You do? Asked Dennis incredulously. Yeah, not nearly enough boys are into fashion. Well, I suppose not, Dennis said. He wasn't sure if he was into fashion or just liked looking at pictures of pretty dresses, but he chose not to mention it. Do you have a favourite designer? Lisa asked. Dennis wasn't sure if he did, but he remembered really liking one of the dresses in the magazine, a cream floor-length ball gown designed by John Galley or something. John Galley something? he said. John Galliano? Yeah, he's amazing. A legend. He designs all the pieces for Dior too. Dennis loved that she said pieces. That was the word they used in Vogue for items of clothes. Well, this is my house. Thanks, Dennis. Bye! Dennis's heart sank a little that their work was already over. She went to go towards the front door, then stopped for a moment. You could come over at the weekend if you like, she said. I've got loads of great fashion magazines I could show you. I really want to be a designer or a stylist or something when I'm older. Well, you are very stylish, said Dennis. He meant it sincerely, but it somehow sounded cheesy. Thank you, said Lisa. She knew she was. Everyone knew she was. It's Saturday tomorrow. Is 11 o'clock any good for you? I think so, said Dennis, as if any event in his past or future could prevent him from being at her house at 11. See you then, she said, and she gave him a smile and passed out of view. And just like that, Dennis's world went back to normal again, like when the lights go on in the cinema at the end of a film. All right, we're going to leave that there for today. Hope you enjoyed listening to the story. Can't wait to see all of the things people have sent me over the weekend when I get back to my emails on Tuesday. And don't forget, you can keep sending me any photos or good news stories or anything from what you've been up to in the week. And next Sunday we'll have a massive 2-week full Sharing Sunday session. Great. Hope you enjoyed my pajamas. Don't know if I mentioned I'm in my pajamas. I'm in my pajamas, can't you tell? My little sleeping cap. All right. Thanks, everyone. I shall see you Tuesday. Next live stream is on Tuesday. Bye.